To witches before the Salem Witch Trials. I did a past life reading for a client the other day, and what came through was this experience that she had. That was the experience that a whole collective of souls had, and it was directly before the very popularly known and understood Salem Witch Trials. So what happened was this group, this collective of souls came in, very, very powerful souls. And they came in to own their power as healers, as witches, as practitioners. Some of them made it through this initial stage. They grew up to become women who were very empowered, who didn't give a shit about the patriarchy, about following rules. And they were the real threat to the patriarchy. And so the powers that be, all men in positions of leadership within the church, the government, communities, that's why they ended up having the Salem Witch Trials. Whatever that looked like, that's why that came about. But those women started off as young girls who were absolutely full of light, of love. Their beauty on the outside, especially of my client. My client in particular was absolutely gorgeous. She was 13 or 14 years old. Her beauty was just unmatched in the town where she lived. It was matched only by her beauty and light on the inside. She was so powerful. She was so connected. She was always seeing and hearing things from other dimensions, but she couldn't talk about it with anyone. Her family was very religious. I got like Pennsylvania area, in the colonies. Like I said, very religious, maybe either Puritan or Quaker. I don't know. That was the energy coming through. That might not be the right label, but that was the energy. She couldn't talk to anyone about this. She knew that she would be labeled as crazy. So she already felt alone and isolated. But the men in the town took notice. They felt her energy. They felt her power. They were so drawn to her, but they knew that they couldn't. They didn't dare mess with her. They just knew that they weren't allowed to. Every time they thought of it, every time they tried, their intentions, their plans were foiled. And that let them know that she was highly protected. And again, this was an experience that many souls had during this time frame. She was going to eventually grow up to be a very powerful practitioner, very powerful healer. And the men in the town, particularly religious leaders, they knew this. And so they would employ other boys and other men to essentially gang stalk her. They would send boys to her school that didn't even go to the school to bully her. And they would only be there for one day. They would just be there for the very brief incident of torturing her. Then they would be gone. If they did get caught by anyone, no one cared, misogyny. But even if they did, he wasn't a student anyway, so just go away, get off campus, leave the school. Grown men would follow her, like a group of 4 or 5 men would follow her, not like 4 men together just walking behind her. It would be like one man behind her, one man across the way, one man would come out from a building, and they would all move almost like this, as though they had shared the same brain or mind. They were doing the same thing. They would walk, they would stare at her, she would look around, get uncomfortable, and then they would stop and pretend they were doing something else. A bunch of grown men at the same time. She was always getting harassed. Everywhere she went, there was some weird, strange, scary man. And again, who was she going to tell? She was already being invalidated at school. Oh, well, it doesn't matter. He doesn't go here. He's gone now. Don't worry about it. You're fine. He didn't he only have a few scratches. He only ripped out some of your hair. He only, destroyed part of you're fine. You're fine. Get over it. He won't be here anymore. We don't even know who he is. And they literally drove her to insanity. She was already very vulnerable because she was isolated. They knew she was gifted. They knew that she couldn't share that with her family. They knew that she was a really easy target, and they wanted to drive her insane. She ended up she ended up, I don't know what the word is. She wasn't committed anywhere, but she like left her body. They were so successful in their attempts to discredit her and to weaken her. They didn't want her to be a threat, so they came after her first, and she did. She was driven to insanity. I don't think she lived very long in that lifetime, maybe her mid-20s. And they did this particularly against this type of woman, this group of souls, because they were going to end up growing up to be very strong, very powerful witches and healers. They didn't care about the men. They were very self-empowered. And so they strove early on, and they were very successful, is what I saw in this reading. They were very successful at accomplishing that, at driving these girls insane, because they had no one. They were completely on their own. And a lot of her lesson, and having experienced that as a soul back then, was to integrate the importance of self-validation. She really wanted someone else to see, to witness what was happening to her and say, you're right, this is happening. There is someone after you. I'm so sorry you're going through this. What she needed to do was go within and witness herself. She wanted to learn the lesson, and she's being asked right now in her life to witness herself, validating that what she knows to be true is true, and she's the only person that she needs the validation from. She doesn't need to hear she's right. She doesn't need to be witnessed or to get confirmation from anybody outside of herself. It needs to come from within.